Okay. Welcome to the ManageIQ Sprint 21 report. The sprint ended March 30th, and here on April Fool's Day, we're going to give you a sprint demo, but the sprint demo is no joke. So on to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to give an overview of the sprint statistics. Dan will give an overview of the UI. Then we'll have providers, the REST API, provisioning, automate IPv6, fleecing, and community activities. Next slide, please. Okay. In the sprint that just ended, we made another record for pull requests merged. If my count is right, we had 263 pull requests merged. 107 were bugs, 82 is enhancements. Still don't know what to account for. I guess there's smaller pull requests or something, but things are moving along at a very good clip. As of last night, we had 123 open pull requests, with 27 of them labeled as work in progress. And as of this morning, we were close to 20 pull requests merged in the sprint that just started yesterday. So things are really moving along. Next slide, please. All right, over to Dan to give us an overview of the UI. Lots of changes there.
All right, so this being the almost final sprint, and the next sprint is pretty much cleanup. We tried to get feature complete on most of the areas in the UI. So Foreman UI was turned over and checked in, and it also includes provisioning. I think we'll see a demo about that later. Gave you a little location where it's at. Some of these things are not main tabs, so you need to find them. Orchestration stacks are in there. We added tagging. That's under clouds. And then got the full support in for orchestration templates. We're still working on some bugs, but the support is there. Everything pretty much works. We did add tagging to that as well, and we have a support for draft templates. So now you can make templates that are like in progress being worked on, so they're not actually being used yet. Gives you a capability to have like duplicate content and things like that. Less restrictions, in other words, on the template. Can also now create a service dialog from the template contents. So we'll actually create a dialog for you, and then you can actually go in and edit that dialog and make changes to it. That's located under services inside the catalogs tab. And last but not least, we've got kind of a nice to have for this sprint actually is a HTML5 console using Spice for OpenStack. And I'm going to turn it over to Martin, who's going to give a demo of that.
So let me share my screen. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Great. So we can just see that we have cloud provider edit to the UI. We have an instance of ROS 6 edit, and here we have a single instance. Just pressing the button, and the console will get launched. This is just an API call to the OpenStack. So we have the VNC console that's provided by OpenStack opened in the UI. And this is slightly different to the consoles we have from Revem and VMware in that the window, the HTML is provided by OpenStack. So some setup is needed for this to work, such as allowing the clients to actually access the OpenStack infrastructure. That's it from me.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, that's it for the UI.
Okay. What do we have as the next slide here? Providers?
Yeah, just waiting for the presentation to catch up.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So this sprint we had inventory collection for heat stacks, land, and this is a basis for being able to do auto scaling on the OpenStack infrastructure side. That feature is actually complete, yet waiting on a fog change to land. I think it's really just a fog release. I think everything's merged. We're just waiting for fog to release their library. I didn't want to put that demo in this sprint because not really merged into our code base yet. But I think we can show that off next time. That'll be great. And then we also have connecting a cloud provider to an infrastructure provider on the OpenStack side. This also helps out with the infrastructure auto scaling, where an OpenStack infrastructure provider can get information about the clouds running on top of it and notice that certain hosts are too hot with too many VMs running on it and can automatically spin up new hosts. On the general side, Jason Frey added some refresh scheduling for Foreman and Kubernetes, some things that it was lacking before, which will help out with automatic refreshes for both those providers. And that's it for...
One comment on that.
Go for it.
Yeah, one comment on the refresh scheduling is that in the past, the way it worked was a refresh was put on the queue once a day for like a single item was put on the queue, and that single item would refresh all EMSs. That was changed under the covers to put one item on the queue per EMS type. So although there'll be more items on the queue, it allowed us to have more fine-grained changes per type. So although it was added specifically for Foreman and Kubernetes, it actually affects all providers. And you can set values for all of them to different values if you want.
Values being the refresh interval. How often?
Refresh interval, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that'll be really good. I think that'll allow more granular control over how we're doing our refreshes. And the other thing that's...
Since it's the scheduled refresh, it's really meant for as a safety net, if you will. If events aren't working, events really are the primary driver for refreshes. But on systems that don't have events or that the event code has not been written yet, it's a pretty good way to have a backup scheduled refresh.
Right. So one more thing that just narrowly missed this sprint was SCVMM provisioning. We're working on some test failures on that commit. As soon as that's done, we'll get that merged in, and we can show a demo of that next sprint as well. And that's it for providers.
Awesome. On to REST API.
Okay, so what we did this past sprint was enabling CRUD on providers, as well as supporting the refresh action. So again, the entry point is API providers. So like the other API calls, you can target a single resource or multiple via the single request. We also support specification of single or multiple credential sets, and that can be specified on a create or update. So for creates, you can post directly to API providers or via the create action signature. The edit action for updates, as well as the delete method or delete action for deleting providers. And missing the bottom part there. So the refresh is simply a refresh action you target API providers there. So next slide, please. Just a sample request here. So you can see on the left side a create request for Revim, specifying name, host name, IP address, and whatever other attribute that provider supports. And you can see here an example compound credentials to an array of credential sets, so supporting things like metrics or AMPQ, for example, for others. So that's the create. The refresh. Refresh is a straightforward action refresh you post to the provider's resource. Next slide, please. Okay, and with that, we've verified and tested it against these four: Revim, VMware, OpenStack Cloud, and the Kubernetes team also tested it with EMS Kubernetes. So that's where we are today, and that's it for me.
Very good. On to provisioning and Greg.
Cool. All right. So with some of the stuff you saw before with getting the OpenStack inventory in for stacks and templates, that enables us to be able to do provisioning of the heat orchestration templates. And we showed kind of last time doing that through Amazon CloudFormation. So the exact same functionality is available on the heat side through creating a service, selecting your template provider, and as Dan pointed out now, which was the one missing feature from the last sprint, is from a template you can now create the dialog that you want to use with that service, and then post-creation modify it if you need to add fields, remove fields, modify values. So that's all in now, so that's great. And see, for Foreman, we have a full end-to-end bare metal provisioning available now. We've added organizations and locations into inventory. There's still some outstanding work to do, some filtering around the available host groups and stuff for that, which will be coming in this sprint. And we've changed to use the latest Foreman API PyGem. And we have a demo kind of showing, the whole end-to-end thing from adding a provider through doing provisioning. So if so Brandon's got that.
So this will show the Foreman UI as well as provisioning. Dan explained that there's a new configuration management tab under infrastructure. Add a new provider, a lot of the default things. We're using a single endpoint here instead of hostname and IP address. We're just putting in one endpoint so that we can verify SSL later. Validate credentials and add a provider. A refresh is automatically scheduled, but just to show you, we have the refresh in the dropdown too. Then on the left, it shows a list of all the host groups in the system and the hosts under those host groups. So I'll grab this host and provision it. The Foreman provisioning dialogues are a lot like the regular VM or template provisioning dialogues. You have the request, the purpose tab where you'll be able to select tags if you want them. And then under catalog, you're able to choose the configuration profile, Foreman host group that you want. Put this one under metal. And then under customize, you can change things like root password, hostname, IP address, and either run it now or schedule it for later. When the request is created, we turned off auto approval because we're going after bare metal systems and you don't want to re-provision a box that's in use right now. So it's just an additional safety net.
Right, and that's wired in Automate, so it's actually there, and you can comment it out if you wire your Automate logic to do what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So once you approve it and give your reason, then we'll go back to provisioning state machine, start running through those states quickly. The last message is being updated with the state that it's currently in. Automate state machine hands it over to the internal state machine, which powers up the machine, updates the configuration, and reboots it.
So right at this point, the process is handed off to Foreman to talk to the box over IPMI, reboot it for Fixie, and
it uses Foreman's provisioning template and kickstart, the OS installation, all those with all its values there. When it's done, it configures Puppet, and then it reboots. At that point, you'll see that the configured system was provisioned successfully. If we go back to the configuration management tab, see that the host was in the Raleigh host group, and now it's under the metal host group. See some more details about the host, which we're adding more values to with, as Greg mentioned, the organizations and locations and a few other things that Keenan's working on. And clicking on the host group shows a list of all the hosts there.
Awesome. Nice integration.
And I think that whole thing real time was 25 minutes, you said?
Yeah.
So obviously it's compressed, but yeah, I mean it's a much longer, you know.
Waiting on physical hardware and stuff. It's too long for a demo.
You talking about the provisioning or the whole demo end-to-end, including the EMS refresh?
No, really.
The refresh.
Including the refresh. Okay.
But the provisioning is the majority of it.
Yeah, the majority of the time spent waiting for the box to reboot.
Yeah, yeah. So we can only go as fast as kind of Foreman drives it, and the hardware is capable of doing it. So.
Cool. Cool. So next slide. So jumping over to automate, this sprint we got into daytime control as a dynamic field type. Just a little example of values you can set there, being able to show past dates. And in this one, I took the current date and time and set the hour to like 8 in the morning. And it deals with the time zone values and then is passed as UTC to automate on the back end. So paid a lot of attention to make sure we got the time zone values right with those. And then one PR that we've had around for a little while, finally got cleaned up and merged in this sprint, was being able to enhance the import for automate. With a single export file can contain multiple domains and all the data under that. So the previous one, you kind of just uploaded the whole thing and it merged it. Now you're able to select your source and destination, as well as down to a class level what individual components you want to pull in. And then from that one, since you do have multiple domains in there, you can, once it's uploaded, you can kind of select things, run an import from one destination to a source, and then change it and rerun it again. You don't have to upload it each time. So it allows you to pick and choose and pull stuff, piece together what you need. So next slide show a few screenshots of that. So this is basically showing that top domain. It's a little hard to see in there, but that domain is empty at this point. So if you go to the next slide, this is a screenshot. The top one, the top one is showing the destination, and then the bottom is the source domain, and then the tree view where you can pick into individual classes that you want to pull in during the import. And once you commit that, go to the next slide, please. So then just those items are being imported, and then again you can rerun that, pull in more stuff. So it's quite a big improvement over what we had previously. So that's good. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to point this out. This disabled domains are now clearly marked in the UI. I've been on a number of calls or helping people with issues where the domain was disabled and they couldn't understand why the logic wasn't working the way they expected, and it's not obvious drilling in. So now, it's very clear. And then one we've been hoping to get in was the screenshot on the right there is the entry point for a service. We always used to show all namespaces, class instances, but we knew that state machines were only the real valid entry point for that. So now the UI, with help from the back end, is able to filter out and just show you the proper state machine classes. I wanted to show real quick that on the left is the full list of domains. The right is not showing demo because that domain actually does not have any state machines in it. So, and it still shows you that you can still select into the disabled one, but obviously it's letting you know that it's still disabled. So
very cool.
Yep, all very useful enhancements.
Yeah, Brad Alcar is very happy.
Cool, so am I. All right, I think that's it for Automate.
Okay, on to IPv6 land.
Okay, so in prior sprints, there was some work to remove the address mixin, which allowed us to have hosts and EMSs use either an IP address or a host name for communication. And a lot of that was either unused or just not configured. So we ended up removing that in favor of being able to use the host name column to be used for either an IP address, a host name, IPv6 address. So there was more code paths that needed to be cleaned up to use a host name. So there was a few PRs for that. And finally, there was some work to clean up some of the IPv6 safety in regards to building URIs. There was a pull request on Ruby that they merged, and I backported, or at least put together a way to get the new functionality working with our existing ManageIQ code base. So now you don't need to know that you need to wrap a IPv6 literal in square brackets. So you can provide host there as ::1 in this example, and it'll build it correctly. So there's a lot of cleanup with removing the existing workarounds that we were using. So now if you're creating URIs in ManageIQ, you don't have to worry about IPv6. That's basically it.
So are we done now with IPv6, or is there more left to do?
So there's more to do in terms of the IP address and host name cleanup. So in some of the storage models, there's a few places where we're still using IP address and those up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. Just trying to find any other places where we were using IP address.
Cool.
The UI for when you edit the providers and EMSs, all that kind of stuff, that's still being worked on. So that was a lot of this sprint included that, and it just didn't land yet.
So hopefully in this current sprint that just started, that should land there.
Yep.
Awesome.
That's it.
All right, on to Fleecing.
There you go. So this sprint, we basically introduced a few things. We've implemented support for QCal3. We started to encounter QCal3-based images recently, and some of them are listed as QCal2 with QCal3 compatibility headers. We now support those, and QCal3 proper. The code implemented by Mo should be able to detect features that are introduced throughout the lifespan of the QCal3 format. This way we could fail gracefully if we ever encounter features that we don't support. So that should save us time going forward as we encounter newer images. We also added support for vSAN data stores for VMware. This is really a bug more than an enhancement in that there was very little code needed to change to support this. We were just rejecting it because we didn't understand what it was, but now users who are in VMware environments can now use their vSAN and data stores, and we'll be able to fleece the VMs on them. We also delivered the ability to fleece OpenStack instances, where in the past we were only able to fleece OpenStack images. So now we have some symmetry in fleecing support for OpenStack, and we've seen the fleecing of OpenStack images before, and this is pretty much the same, so there's really no need for demo here. Ongoing, we still have development in progress for fleecing support for SE-VMM. That's it.
As well as reinstating, I think we regressed on Rev fleecing, right? So that's...
Yes, there was a few things, some bugs introduced on our side that broke Rev, and some changes on the Rev side that broke Rev, and we need to kind of resolve them all going forward.
Yep, that's going to be the focus in the short term here.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Rich. Next slide. So on the community side, yesterday we made the Bitvinik branch. The release candidate has been built, and we're working to upload it, and it should be out shortly, in the next, either today or tomorrow, hopefully. to everyone using the Bitvinnik branch, it's a release candidate, so please help us stabilize it. Ask questions on talk, report bugs via GitHub issues, and if you can, make pull requests to fix any bugs you see. There's a new topic on talk for picking a name for the C release. That'll be the next version, and the front runners are 2 world champions, Capablanca and Carlson. So go up there and vote. And with that, I think that's the end of our sprint demo. Are there any questions or comments?
There's some chats in the window.
All right, let me look at the chats in the window.
Nope, nothing.
All right. Is this going to be in CloudForms 3.2 or 3.3? Since CloudForms 3.2 isn't out yet, the stuff that you're seeing is all going to be in CloudForms 3.2.
Someone mute, please.
Yeah, someone's breathing loudly.
Stop breathing.
Loudly, that's all.
April Fool.
All right.
All right, anybody else? Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time, and in 3 weeks we'll have our next sprint demo. This current sprint that just started, we're trying to finish up the features that you saw here, and we're kind of a good portion of the team is going to be, into stabilization mode here to try to get the Bitvinnik release and then the upcoming platforms release all stable and ready to go. That's it. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.